Ask any longtime Nintendo fan which of the company's neglected series they would like to see revived, and one of the most common answers you'll get, after Metroid of course, is F-Zero. Simply put, many fans are hungry for a new high-definition installment in Nintendo's hard-edged, futuristic, blisteringly fast racing franchise, which has lain dormant since 2003's F-Zero GX. And hungry they will remain, at least for the foreseeable future. Nintendo continues to show little intention of bringing a new F-Zero game to the masses, and this is exactly why many Wii U owners are looking to German developer Shinen Multimedia to deliver the futuristic racing goods with Fast Racing Neo, a follow-up to the company's 2011 WiiWare racer Fast Racing League. As it turns out, F-Zero is certainly part of Fast Racing Neo's DNA, but it's only one of several games from which Fast Racing Neo draws its inspiration. Gameplay and aesthetic elements of the cult favorite Wipeout and Extreme G series are also on display here, ultimately resulting in an exciting mishmash of inspirations that futuristic racing fans have good reason to be excited for. Like many other Shinen games, Fast Racing Neo isn't concerned about justifying its gameplay with any sort of story or narrative context. Simply boot up the game and you're off to the races after a couple of genre-standard menu selections. This continues to be a wise decision on Shinen's part. Story-driven games are all well and good, but arcadey, purely gameplay-driven titles like Fast Racing Neo have no need of a story and are better off without one. Once you've picked a mode in a vehicle, it's time to race, and once you start, the first thing that becomes immediately apparent is the game's utterly gorgeous visual presentation. Shinen has long been known for being very good at squeezing every last iota of power out of Nintendo's hardware, and Fast Racing Neo is no different in that regard. All 16 of the game's tracks are visually distinct from one another, with the beautiful environments always daring you to take your eyes off the race and lose yourself in their visual splendor. Just as importantly, the action moves at a rock-solid, buttery smooth 60 frames per second and is unhindered by the various weather and lighting effects on display in any given track, such as rain, snow, dust, and lens flare, all of which are convincing as they realistically enhance and distort your view of the course. Normally I don't touch on graphics until the end of a review, well after I've covered gameplay elements, but they are such an important part of Fast Racing Neo's presentation that I feel they are worth highlighting in this case. The second thing that quickly becomes obvious once you've begun playing the game is how much skill and attention it demands from the player. There's quite a bit more to the racing here than just finding the best lines and shortcuts in each course. For example, small orbs are scattered throughout each track that fill your boost gauge, and you can boost whenever you want as long as there's energy remaining in the gauge. Much of your success in Fast Racing Neo will depend on your ability to boost as often as possible by keeping your gauge filled, but you also have to know when not to boost, as boosting at the wrong time will usually result in you colliding with an obstacle or careening helplessly off the track, resulting in a spectacular wipeout. You can also boost into rival vehicles to cause them to spin out and lose speed, and you basically have to do this to win in higher difficulties. Then there's your vehicle's color, which you can switch between blue and orange at any time. These colors match the many blue and orange strips, ramps, and gates you'll find populating each track. Your aim here is to ensure that your vehicle's color always matches the color of whatever elements you're about to encounter. For example, drive over a blue strip while your vehicle is colored blue and you'll burst forward in a quick boost of speed, but drive over the same strip when your vehicle is orange and you'll quickly lose speed, allowing your opponents to easily overtake you. The same goes for any other track elements colored in this way, and success always hinges on your ability to switch colors at the right time. In fact, later tracks contain dangerous jumps that you outright can't make unless you're the right color when you hit the ramps preceding them. Of course, this is all in addition to the usual racing staples of cornering well and not hitting walls, and even these basics can be challenging due to the game's sheer speed. But there's a fine line between challenge and frustration, and in my experience, Fast Racing Neo crosses it constantly. I'm fine with a game demanding that you master its mechanics in order to succeed, but the margin for error in Fast Racing Neo is so incredibly small that the single-player portion of the game quickly starts to feel frustrating, oppressive, and frankly unfair. Now, when I say the margin for error is small, I mean it starts small and only gets smaller from there. Even the Subsonic League, the game's easiest difficulty level, presents a stiff challenge that may be enough to turn less skilled and less dedicated players away. You'll need to have a good grip on all of the aforementioned gameplay mechanics to even have a shot at passing the Subsonic League. But unlocking the second league, the Supersonic League, introduces a difficulty wall so severe that you likely won't even see the first place racer at all, let alone pass them with anything less than a nearly perfect race. Not picking up enough boost orbs and boosting at almost every safe opportunity, you might place in the top 3 if you're incredibly lucky and make no other mistakes. Hitting a wall more than once or twice, you're probably going to lose. Failing to successfully utilize every single color strip and ramp on a track in every lap, pack it in and go home. Wiping out even once? Might as well quit and restart. There always seems to be a fair bit of rubber banding in effect, but it's never in your favor. You'll always struggle to reach and stay in first place, but your AI opponents seem to pass you effortlessly if you make even the slightest mistake. The game's unreasonably severe difficulty in this manner presents my main problem with Fast Racing Neo, as it's very likely that the vast majority of players will never be able to advance beyond the Subsonic League. Unfortunately, because racing speed is tied to difficulty levels like in Mario Kart, this means only a small minority of incredibly skilled players will ever get to play the game at its highest speeds, which is a real shame and feels unfair. Again, while I think it's perfectly fine for a game to require that you master its mechanics to succeed, requiring 100% mastery should come at the end of a gradually rising difficulty curve, not at the beginning or middle. Thankfully, you'll at least never have to blame the controls for your many inevitable failures. While the controls are definitely a little slippery and somewhat floaty, that's because the vehicles themselves float above the tracks. It doesn't take too long to adjust to this and start accounting for it when cornering. Fast Racing Neo offers a standard suite of single-player and multiplayer options. Championship Mode is the game's main single-player offering, and it's exactly what you think it is. You start in the Subsonic League and work your way through 4 cups of 4 tracks each. Once you've placed 3rd or higher in all 4 cups, you unlock the next league and try to do it all over again, with increased speed and difficulty making things a whole lot tougher. Essentially, Championship Mode plays out exactly like Grand Prix Mode in a Mario Kart game. Time Attack Mode removes the AI opponents and challenges you to beat the development team's best time on each track, and there's a different set of times to beat for each league, so don't go thinking you've outmatched the developers just because you're able to beat their times in the Subsonic League. The game's soul-crushing difficulty is in full effect here as well. Beating the developers' times requires total memorization of each track and absolute mastery of the gameplay mechanics, much like the rest of the game. Fortunately, Shinen has anticipated that you'll make plenty of time-costing mistakes in your quest to beat their times, offering a quick retry option for those who want to try again and again without waiting through mini selections each time. Then there's Hero Mode, which isn't even playable until you've clawed your way to the Hypersonic League, the game's hardest and fastest difficulty level. Impossibly, this mode ratchets the difficulty up even more. Not only do you have to place first in order to advance, your boost meter also becomes a shield meter, resulting in an instant game over should you deplete the meter and come into contact with anything, even a wall. F-Zero fans should get a particular kick out of this mode given the shared boost and shield gauge, if you can even reach it, that is. Fast Racing Neo offers both local split-screen and online multiplayer. Up to 4 players can race against one another locally, and the mode works as intended. Online play supports up to 8 players, and you can race either with strangers around the world or with people registered on your Wii U friends list. Unsurprisingly, local multiplayer comes with some loss in graphical quality depending on how many people are playing. With 2 players, 60 frames per second is maintained with some noticeable loss in visual fidelity. With 3 or 4 players, the frame rate is understandably halved to 30 frames per second, but the game plays perfectly well and looks surprisingly decent despite the compromises being made. My only complaint about local multiplayer is that you can only play entire cups, with no option to select individual tracks that I could find. This seems like a rather silly, needless oversight, all things considered. Unfortunately, I was not able to test the online play in time for this review. In all my times trying to find a match, I only ever got matched up with one other reviewer and they just sat at the starting line without actually playing. Putting the game's servers through serious stress tests will have to wait until the game is released, and I will publish a follow-up video demonstrating online play under normal circumstances as soon as possible. Otherwise, online play works much like it does in Mario Kart 7 and 8. The game pre-selects a couple of tracks for players to vote on, with the most voted track more likely to be selected. With only 16 tracks and 10 vehicles to see and unlock, Fast Racing Neo is somewhat light on content, but the amount feels reasonable for the $15 price point. You also have to consider that those 16 tracks are all incredibly replayable, and they all look and feel very different from one another, with layouts, environments, and obstacles unique to each one. On the other hand, the vehicles are disappointingly generic and don't really stand out from one another in any meaningful way other than their attributes. Honestly, I couldn't identify any of them by name if you held a gun to my head. Even their varying attributes feel somewhat shallow. Each vehicle is only rated on top speed and acceleration via simple bars that don't really tell you much about how they handle. Each vehicle also has a different weight, but again, that doesn't translate into anything measurable and you're better off just trying each vehicle to find the one that's right for you. The soundtrack is comprised of exactly the kind of generic techno, rock, and techno-rock fusion you would expect from a game like this. It's not memorable outside of the game in the slightest, but it doesn't need to be. It does a fine job of complementing and servicing all the high-speed racing action Fast Racing Neo has to offer. The announcer and sound effects are similarly basic, and get the job done without standing out. Ultimately, Fast Racing Neo is a quality title that looks just fantastic and definitely quenches the thirst for a high-speed futuristic racer in the vein of F-Zero and Wipeout. I like it for those reasons, but at the same time, prospective players need to be fully aware of the game's utterly brutal, unforgiving difficulty that will leave less skilled and less committed players in the dust, which will at the very least prevent them from ever playing the game at its fastest speeds. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can find all the links you need in the video description below. Otherwise, keep it on GameXplain for more on fast racing Neo and all things gaming.